However, if that $28 level is overcome, every time that happens, silver price zoom up, close to double, went from 28 to $50 in a hurry back in 2011 and 1980. So, and that's why now, especially now that $20 silver is really a great accumulation entry point.
There are very few companies left that are what we can call emerging silver producers, just a handful. And with projections for demand for silver to skyrocket in the future, who will be able to supply all of the silver that the world demands? Today, we're going to sit down with John Lee. He's the CEO of Silver Elephant Mining. Let's find out if John is positioning his company a little ahead of this curve and will be able to meet the skyrocketing demand for silver in the future. Enjoy the interview. The world is running out of silver, but there's just one problem. There aren't many companies around that can fill the pipeline when this demand explosion occurs. Today, we're fortunate to be joined by Mr. John Lee from Silver Elephant Mining. His company is positioned to do well as an emerging producer when the demand for silver takes off. John, welcome to Ron's Basement.
Thank you, Ron, for the invite. It's great to be on your show for the first time.
So we hear these stories, and it's our pleasure to have you here, John, but we hear all these stories about exploding demand for silver in the future. How is your company positioning yourselves to be able to help satisfy that demand and profit from that when it comes to fruition?
Right. Well, Ron, I am the chairman and CEO and founder of Silver Elephant. We have a project called Pulicayo Silver Project in Bolivia. And the project had over $40 million of investments in the past, including over 100,000 meters of drilling. There is an independent study that estimates over 100 million ounces of silver in the ground in the measured indicated category. Specifically, to answer your question, is the company made a news release to have partnered with a well-financed producer to put the mine into production. So we believe the production will be imminent, could be in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And what that means is a near-term cash flow to the company. So, given today's uncertainty, rising interest rates, inflation, infrastructure, logistical bottlenecks, there are fewer and fewer new mines that are being put in production. I would say that our project is one of the very few in this producing category.
Okay, interesting. And you said there's 100 million ounces of silver at this project in Bolivia, correct?
Yes. The project's name is Pulicayo. It is it's what they call the brownfield exploration. Pulicayo had a historical production of over 600 million ounces of silver since the 1800s. It was actually the silver from Pulicayo that helped the Spaniard conquered the world back a couple hundred years ago. Keep in mind that the technology they used to recover silver was antiquated. There's not a whole lot of exploration with modern techniques. So the company picked up the project over almost a decade ago, and altogether since early 2000, through 3 separate companies, a lot of money is being poured into it, and a lot more silver was found.
Interesting. And I was reading about this recent news release and agreement you had with, is it Andean Mining? Is that correct?
Indian Precious Metals, yes.
Indian Precious Metals. And what I found interesting was that Silver Elephant could benefit from this agreement to the tune of somewhere between $5 and $7 million. But it seemed like to me what they were going to do was process the ore for you. There really wasn't any expense that Silver Elephant would incur. But what I really found interesting was that this amount of ore that they will process really only represents, I think it was 6% of the total silver at the project.
Ron, you captured the essence of this transaction. We see it as a win-win because Indian Precious Metals currently are processing materials from its own mine and other surrounding projects like Pulicayo, but it's not getting enough of that feed into their plant. So this transaction would enable Andean Precious Metal to fill and increase their capacity utilization. And also because the Pulukayo grades are about doubled of what the grades they're processing right now. Within 3 to 6 months, we're going to see likely increased production, marked increase in head grades, better recoveries, and better cash flow for Andean. And that translates for Silver Elephant is the transaction protects Silver Elephant's cash flow. So we are, so long as they're hauling materials, we'll be getting close to we'll be getting $5 million over the next 18 months, including $3 million in the next 4 months. So we forego a bit of upside, Ron. However, we're protected on the downside, and given a lot of the uncertainties, the company believe is the best way to go and for our shareholder interest.
Sure. And do you have plans at some point in the future to start production potentially on your own at that project?
Well, certainly that is the plan. And Ron, as you said, this transaction, even though, it is material because at the surface layer of what they call the oxide materials, which is compatible to be processed at India's precious metals facility, is only represents 6% of the company's resource. So the crown jewels still sit right beneath the oxide layer, of which then we're approaching onto what they call the sulfide layer. The company is commencing studies to provide additional colors on the economics of the sulfide project. And I think, the studies, the numbers will come out sometime in 2024. And just about the time when that oxide layer gets removed, the company will be in a position to make a production decision. And now, Ron, of course, if we're going to build a plant and be processing on site at Pulukayo, there is some capital expenditure required, and we're looking for additional partners such as India's Precious Metals to help us finance that portion of to help finance the production on site, and again to further minimize our dilution and risks, and provided that an upside for the shareholders as silver prices run up.
Interesting. And John, I found it interesting as I dug into your investor presentation. I did not realize that Bolivia is the number 6 producer of silver in the world, and that there's a rather robust mining industry developed within Bolivia. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Ron, it's you're right. A lot of times, in our view, Ron, not only is Bolivia the 6th largest silver producer in the world, is one of the most stable countries in South America to operate in. It's got a currency that's pegged to the US dollar. There's a freely exchange. There's no currency control, and we have also very strong community support within the region. Within sort of the 200 kilometers of where Pulukayo operates, over 40 million ounces silver is dug out of the ground, and we believe that's only the start, because up to year 2000, there's almost no foreign investments in the country. And however, I think the tide has turned, and the pendulum has swung from very left-wing mentality to opening for foreign investments. So over the last few years, close to $500 million being raised through the North American market, and there are a number of operators from Canada, the United States, and Europe that are operating in Bolivia. So we believe it's one of the sort of treasure, hidden treasure. And we've been in Bolivia in the last 10 years, and we're very comfortable with Bolivia. It is a mining jurisdiction, and people are very accustomed and familiar with mining. So we believe the risk is very manageable, and we're very happy to be operating in Bolivia.
Interesting. And currently the company sits on a resource of about 100 million silver ounces, correct?
Yes.
Is there exploration opportunity within that project?
For sure. We're looking at a 20 kilometer strike and about 5 kilometer width. So it's a big rectangular box.
Hmm.
There are a number of anomalies that the company had identified through geophysics. The 600 million ounces of silver was dug out of just one vein, and there's been several parallel veins that have been discovered.
Okay.
And not only that, there's also satellite deposits such as Paca, and that is a deposit that we're working with Indian Precious Metals. And we're very, very confident with additional explorations that further discoveries and silver ounces will be found. However, it is not the highest priority. Exploration costs money, and there's always risks involved with making discoveries. We already have 100 million ounces in the ground, and we're one of the few, probably can count within two hands,
Right.
of a deposit this size controlled by a junior company. So I think that affords the company with a lot of flexibilities in heading towards expanding resources if silver prices were to go up further, or focusing on developing our existing resource. If the situation of the market remains challenging, and we can look for ways to get the higher grade areas of our mine into production and generate cash flow.
And you bring up a great point. You do have 100 million ounces of silver. That is significant, especially as you said that, it came into my mind that on an annual basis, the entire mining industry only produces 850 million. So you have a sizable amount of silver right now. Would it be safe to say that maybe the most effective use of capital would not be to try to, you have plenty right now,
Yes.
would be to not go exploring, but to do what you're doing, which is to move the projects forward in ways that you can actually monetize the silver that you already have in the ground?
Absolutely. And further, Ron, even though silver price has gone up 500% from its low in 2004, and I've been in the silver industry for 20 years, befriended with the likes of David Morgan and many of the silver experts. But silver prices hasn't really caught up to inflation. So even though silver has gone from $4 to right now $20, the silver miners are not making money. And that includes if you go down from the First Majestic Pan American Silver all the way to the junior developers, producers. So I think not only are we looking to upgrade Silver Elephant to becoming a producer, but we're we're finding partners and structuring in a way that would minimize our potential losses or protect our eliminate any potential losses, but while giving a bit of upside. Like I said, we're giving up 5% of the resources to generate cash flow, and should the market turns and silver start outperforming inflation, then we could be looking at getting additional leverage in silver by taking on a bit more risk and ownership.
Yeah, I follow the silver industry and the mining industry very closely, and it's just incredible what's going on right now, just from the precious metal price, but also the valuation of the silver mining stocks, developers, producers, any of them. It's, in my opinion, an opportunity that could potentially result in some serious price appreciation in the future, because there's just no money going into the sector. I really like the way you structured the deal with Andean, where it is almost like a no lose for you, but it does give you some upside. But you just have to wonder that when demand does pick up, where will all this silver come from? Because it's not like you can just turn a switch and start producing more silver.
Somewhere around 80%, I would say 60 to 80% of the silver is produced as a byproduct. So if you look at largest silver producer is Peru and Mexico, especially in the case of Peru, silver is byproduct of copper, lead, and zinc mines. You're right that those production are silver price inelastic, because and then secondly, nowadays it would take about a decade from the point of a discovery to producing a mine, because all the red tapes in logistics, in exploration, in drilling, in accessing, in permitting, in all the different consultations, and not to mention the prohibitive capital expenditures and dwindling financing options with rising interest rates. So you're not going to get more supply coming onto the stream, and the cost of production continue to go up. And I think there's going to be some time an inflection point on the silver price where once it starts to run, it's going to be a very exclusive club run of a very few number of producers that are exposed directly to the silver price. So I think, Ron, not only do you want to look for a producer that are producing silver, but you want to look for as pure of a silver producers as you can, because a lot of times when silver is going up, if something's hitting the fence, and you don't want to have exposure to copper or zinc or lead, these base metal projects, of which you can buy, individually of these companies. So there are very few pure silver producers out there, and Silver Elephant's Pulakayo project, it would be one of them because the silver content is over 50% of the overall precious metals content.
Yeah, and it seems like in the last maybe 5 or 10 years, a lot of the what had been traditional pure silver miners pivoted and became gold miners at the same time. You're correct. There are very few pure silver miners. And to circle back to something you said prior to that, when it comes to silver being a byproduct of a lot of copper mining, I heard Ross Beatty say about a year ago that indeed that is the case, but an interesting point is that the newer copper deposits, and maybe you know more about this than I do, but they're deeper. The nature of the newer copper deposits are that there isn't as much silver that's produced when they mine the new copper deposits.
Well, first of all, you brought a good point. If you look at some of the pure silver producers, like Fortuna Silver, for example, they bought Roxy Gold, and Silver Standard, got into the gold mining business. Coeur d'Alene had purchased a number of gold projects. I don't think it was by choice, rather because they couldn't find quality silver projects to acquire, and they don't want to. Gold is the next king to silver, and certainly they want to branch into further base metals. I don't think it was a matter of choice. I don't think it's a matter of choice, but it's a matter of a necessity to continue to replenish their reserves. In terms of copper, I am not a geologist per se, but as you go deeper, the commingling of metals become less common. So as you go deeper, like you said, you're hitting these massive sulfides, and usually they're more concentrated towards one metal versus the other.
Yeah. I just get I guess the word is flabbergasted sometimes as a silver mining investor when I look at what's going on and realize, from the big picture supply demand perspective, and that there's no money going into the junior sector in this. Like, where will all this silver come from? And, I don't give financial advice, but for me, especially lately, I've become very interested in buying, companies like yours that are on the verge of production or advanced state, but there just aren't many of them out there. And it goes to what you said earlier, that when this market does turn, and everybody wakes up and realizes we don't have enough silver, it'll take 5 or 10 years for the industry to catch up, and that could be a very lucrative period for the companies that are ahead of the curve. Do you think that Silver Elephant could be ahead of the curve at this point?
Well, Ron, like you, I don't know how long you've been in the mining investment business, but I spent my first 10 years from 2000 to 2010 as a retail investor. So I'm like much of your audience are pulling up a table and looking at the different ounces in the ground and their valuations and their permitting stage and their grades and do all those computations. At this current valuation and juncture, I see as an incredible entry point. It is almost the same as it was in 2004. When there was absolutely no interest in the street, and you can cherry pick, you can have the pick of the litter, and So this is different from, say, 2009 or 2019, 2021, where you had a knee jerk of crisis, and then you have a very quick rebound. And this is a very slow bleed, and subsequently, I'm not sure sort of the trajectories of the rise. Just real quick, from a technical perspective, $28 is a very critical, it's a very big resistance level. That's why you're seeing a very heavy managing and concerted effort to put a lid on that, on the $28 level. However, if that $28 level is overcome, every time that happens, silver price zoom up, close to double, went from $28 to $50 in a hurry back in 2011 and 1980. So, and that's why now, especially now that $20 silver is really a great accumulation entry point. And regarding the pick of the litter, Silver Elephant is one of the few stories out there with 100 million ounces of silver that's being like a baby thrown into the water. So you don't have to take on that exploration risk buying companies that has no resources in the ground or in jurisdictions that that you don't feel comfortable. And right now the company is trading at the lowest price ever, despite it's going on to becoming a producer. We're selling at $10 million Canadian market cap, which is unfathomable. Everybody who's financed the company's entry point, like myself, is 3 times that. So I would assure Ron, I think in the end, our projects are in good standing. We're going to shortly demonstrate we have a very strong local support. Otherwise, the mine would not have been put in production. We have a joint venture partner with over $70 million in the bank. And the company is not looking to undertake any additional equity diluted financing if all goes well for the next 18 months, potentially longer. So there's no other shoe to drop. And, we have quite a bit of haters out there. Unfortunately, everybody bought into the story when it was 100 million ounces of silver. The market cap was close to 10 times what we are today. But I just want to assure shareholders that everything is there. There's no hidden. There's no shoe to drop. There's no hidden things in hidden closet. We are really, the team is very excited to get the project into production imminently, Ron, and we will be making news release within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, as a shareholder, I'll be excited to hear that, and I love what you said earlier, that we are an exclusive club, right? Right now, the few people who are, maybe we can use the term, awake to this opportunity that's around us. I also liked what you said, and I feel this way not just about Silver Elephant, but a lot of the other companies that are in the same sector. Like, there's not many more shoes that can drop. Like, all the shoes have dropped. It's hard to fathom more or sentiment becoming worse than it is. But the good news that I like to remind people is, when things have been so difficult, and look, your company survived, right? You're now positioned. Yes. You're in a great position. One positive to all the negatives is there's a big runway for improvement in the future.
What's the downside versus upside? That's the whole point. We're not looking to dilute finance. There's 100 million ounces in the ground. Our joint venture partner has done their research to have written a check before the production starts. They have done their homework. Indian Precious Metals have excellent world-class team. We have jointly decades of experience operating in Bolivia. So I think we're going to form a very formidable team. Ron, regarding the next shoe to drop, there could be more shoes to drop because a lot of the companies are what I call upside down. They have more debt than they have in cash. Their operations are losing money, and they cannot shut down the plant because they have commitments and obligation to the local communities and the government. And they're afraid to minimize or downsizing their production because a lot of the investors are measuring the company's value based on the production, not so much based on the losses. So I think a lot of people a lot of my peer companies are in very, very difficult shoe. And a lot of my shareholders I talk to and prospective shareholders I talk to are, facing this dilemma of Sophia's choice. And when the cash call comes and when your baby come on calling to be fed, which ones are you going to sacrifice? And unfortunately, that's the state of the mining industry, and that's why people are, all these mining conferences I go to right now, people are already made their investments. There are no additional discretionary capital. They're just looking for company updates, which is what creates opportunities, because as the number of companies to dwindle and disappear for different reasons and just can't make it, then I think at some point the balance is going to tilt towards becoming a right now it's an extreme buyer's market, but over time, over time, I think Silver Elephant will be one of the very few companies that are going to check the boxes from investors who have money to look for new investments.